Nick Thompson, veterinary surgeon here. I hope you're very well. On this production, they call me the Gut Doctor. I've been working for years with our friends at Verm-X, and I really want to thank them for the sponsorship of this show, because they allow me to put hours aside to research the stuff that I'm discussing with you. So absolutely fantastic. It's great to be here, and I hope you're well. Summer is with us. It's absolutely glorious the last couple of weeks. So really delighted to be here and sharing this with you. I think I've actually got real sunlight coming through the window here at me in my new office. So all very, very exciting. So what's happened since I last spoke to you 5 weeks ago? And okay, now I'll do this in order, actually. Last week I wasn't able to be with you because I was at the Regenerative, the Sustainable Food Trust conference, this one here, at Fir Farm in Lower Swell in Oxfordshire. And it was organised by, like I say, the Sustainable Food Trust. And they're a wonderful group who are trying to move agriculture into a more environmentally friendly space, and I think they're doing a fantastic job, and I support them wholeheartedly. So I was at the conference there, and was just wowed by what people were saying. A lot of farmers getting up and talking about how they've changed their agriculture to regenerative farming. They've got mixed farms, they've got cattle and sheep, as well as raising crops, and they're just doing some fantastic work, reducing their use of pesticides, and being stewards of the land to give to the next generation. So really exciting stuff. So if you're interested in that stuff, then do take a look. And again, if you are interested in that side of thing, I've just discovered a really wonderful podcast. Okay, I'm going to show you it there. Okay, I showed it just now on the Raw Pet Medics. Okay, it's called the Regenerative Journey. It's by a really lovely Aussie farmer called Charlie Arnott, and I've been listening to it for about the last week, and I've done about 16 1 hour, 1 to 1.5 hour episodes. I just can't get enough of it. It's so positive, and the Aussie farmers are really at the forefront of this because they're working in extreme conditions, so they have to be absolutely on it. You know, we're here in the UK in a very temperate, gentle climate, and I'm not saying it's easier, it's different, but you know, we don't have to deal with bushfires very much, and we don't have to deal with droughts very much, whereas the Aussies have to work with those things all the time. So hats off to the Aussie farmers. They seem to be an unbelievably great bunch. Let's have a look. A little bit of housekeeping, just a little bit of housekeeping. You see the logo there. Be Live, which is the people I use to broadcast these shows, they've put it on, and I don't know how to get rid of it. So apologies for that, but it's basically showing solidarity to the conflict in Ukraine, and I think that's fantastic because I'm very sympathetic, and my heart goes out to anybody in any conflict. You know, there's arguably no winners in war, but you know, very difficult. And my heart goes out to everybody involved in that conflict. Now, on a slightly brighter note, so it's very slightly irritating, but if you look at me, not it, then we'll be fine. So Rosie has said to me that our lovely friends at Verm-X are offering a discount if you go to vermex.com, which is their website, have a little look around if you fancy, you will get 15% off your purchase if you put in the code holistic15, which is quite easy to remember because my practice is called Holistic Bet, and 15 is how many percent you get off. Holistic 15, and you'll get 15% off your next purchase. So today, what are we doing? We are talking about boarding. Three things. We're talking about boarding pets. We're talking about feeding pets. Well, boarding for holidays. Okay, today's all about holidays because we thought we'd be topical because it's June, just about to go into the summer holidays. So we thought we'd get ahead of the game and talk about those things. So we're going to talk about boarding and ways through, and we're going to talk about feeding in the holiday situation, and we are going to be talking about preventing parasites in the holiday situation as well. Next time is in 3 weeks' time because we're a week late because of the Sustainable Food Trust conference. We're going to be doing worms and domestic animals, which again comes down to the sustainable regenerative agriculture thing in a really, really big way, which is wonderful. And that's going to be on Thursday, the 14th of July, my son's birthday, no less. So we're going to be jumping on in 3 weeks, Thursday, the 14th of July, Arthur's birthday, for worms and domestic animals. And I'm going to be looking at worms as part of a regenerative agriculture, as well as talking about worms in dogs and cats. So it's all to play for, really. So there you go. We've got 3 topics there. I'm going to talk to you today. Normally we would go to slides and what have you, but I just thought, let's have a little bit of personal time. If anybody has any comments, any questions, please jump in. Michelle is here. She's all the way from just outside Chicago. Lorian is here. Eileen is here. Hi, Eileen. She's here. So great. Everyone's coming along for the ride, which is brilliant. So boarding. So I think the first thing that everybody thinks about when they think about boarding is they think about vaccination. Okay, so let's have a little look there. There are 3 groups of vaccines commonly offered in veterinary practices today, and they are DHP, distemper, hepatitis, and parvo. They are lepto. I don't know why I'm looking at my notes. I know this stuff backwards. And they are kennel cough. Okay, now the thing about distemper, hepatitis, and parvo is that the World Small Animal Veterinary Association, they have said in black and white, and if you've been listening to any of my my broadcasts, then you will have heard me say this, but I'm going to say it again for anybody who's new. The World Small Animal Veterinary Association say that the maximum frequency, i.e. the shortest distance between 2 DHP vaccinations, is 3 years in an adult dog. Now, what they don't say is you should vaccinate your dog with distemper, hepatitis, and parvo every 3 years. They say it's the maximum. So what that means is that it may, for your dog, it might be actually 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, maybe even a lifetime. According to the World Small Animal Veterinary Association, distemper, hepatitis, and parvo given as a pup can last for an entire lifetime. And so that's really something to bear in mind and something to have a chat with your vet about. And what can you do if you're thinking, crumbs, dogs going into kennels, they've had they were vaccinated for DHP 4 years ago. What am I going to do? I don't really want to vaccinate. What you can do is you can titer test. You can go to your vets and ask them to take a blood sample to test the antibodies for distemper, hepatitis, and parvo. It's as simple as that. And I find 19 out of 20 dogs will be fine. They'll have great antibodies, and you won't even need to think about vaccinating. So, as far as distemper, hepatitis, and parvo, it's a quite a simple approach. Okay, so that, I hope that's useful. With lepto doesn't persist very well in the body, so they think, and so if you choose to do leptospirosis, you have to do that every year. The unfortunate thing with lepto is that you can't test for it meaningfully because the antibodies run off quite quickly, and yet the protection can last for at least a year. Okay, so if you choose to go with the lepto, then that's something you're going to have to do annually. As far as kennel cough is concerned, that is the least worst from my perspective of the vaccines, because it goes where, this is the intranasal vaccine, it goes where the bug goes and therefore stimulates a similar immunity to the bug, and it's not really systemic. I.e., all the activity happens here, and you're not electrifying the entire body's immune system. So of all the vaccines, that for me is the least worst. Now, why does this pertain to boarding? Because most boarding kennels will ask you for, if you're lucky, they might ask you for demonstration of immunity, which means that you can get a certificate from either from your vet if it's been within 3 years for DHP, or if they've had the dog's had a lepto shot and a kennel cough intranasal vaccine, then that might suffice. So you don't need to vaccinate, especially for the kennels. Okay. However, some kennels say that they require a vaccine certificate, a current and up-to-date vaccine certificate, and they won't take titer tests. If that's the case, I would really talk to them very carefully, or even talk to the council, because the council dictate the rules as to what requirements they need in order to get into the kennels. Okay, so I would definitely have a conversation with those two, because there are kennels around, there are many kennels around actually, who are fine with titer tests for those things that you can titer test for. So you can usually get away with that. Now, boarding, if the kennel, if the dog is going to kennels or going to stay with a friend or something like that, I would suggest you send the regular food with the dog. Hopefully you're feeding raw or you're feeding fresh food, and basically you just make up your 14 packs of the food, get through the 14 days while you're away, and hopefully that will happen. I mean, let's face it, you pay vast amount of money to kennels for them to keep your dog, and therefore why not ask them politely if they put the food in the freezer and feed the dog, because then you've got continuity. Dog is happier because there's no change in food, and I think that's a good way forward. So there you go. Those just two of the key elements for me, and in terms of boarding. I'll have a wee look at our questions before we go on to our next topic, which is feeding. Okay, Eileen says she really enjoyed Dogfest, and thank you to Verm-X for that. Not sure what you've been up to, but it sounds like Verm-X have been very generous. Great stuff. Well done. Yeah, Laurie and Coates says, unfortunately, a lot of boarding kennels. Here you go. I'll show you the thing. Unfortunately, they want an up-to-date vaccine record. Ask the question. Ask them for the exact wording of their requirements, and if necessary, go to the council, because, like I say, it may be that you need to demonstrate immunity, okay, which is not showing a vaccine certificate. Vaccine certificate shows that the dog has received the vaccine. Doesn't necessarily mean that there is an immune response to that vaccine. Okay, so I would definitely go there. Oh, the other thing I was just showing, Michelle from the States, she's saying a lot of kennels won't accept raw food. Wow, that's a real shame. In which case you could lightly cook it and send it in there, perhaps. I would do that. There are a couple of companies in the UK who are doing good quality, lightly cooked human grade food. So you can always, at a push, you can go with them. That would be fine. Absolutely great. But the other thing I was going to say about kennel cough was, and they're very hot on this in the States, Michelle, I'm pleased to say, the kennel cough, you can, it's an intranasal vaccine. The kennel cough vaccine goes up the nose. But what they don't highlight in this country, but they do in the States, is that you can pass live virus, live bacterium. It's actually bacterium, which is Bordetella bronchoseptica. Gives you a septic bronchi. It will can be released from the nose of a dog for up to 6 weeks after vaccination. So it means, so in the States, they will say, please have your kennel cough booster at least 6 weeks before you come to us, in order to allow it to clear, because otherwise this vaccinated dog can sneeze over the dog in the kennel next door and give it kennel cough. Okay, technically that is a possibility. Whereas what happens in this country, when I was in practice, people would come in with the dog and go, oh, I'm going on holiday tomorrow, please will you do the kennel cough, because otherwise the kennel won't accept them. And that means that for the entire 2 weeks while you're off in Marbella, the dog is potentially sneezing Bordetella bronchoseptica over every dog that it comes in contact with. Okay, so just a word to the wise. Let's have a look. Do any other? No, it looks like everyone's happy so far. This is fantastic. Great. Okay, so moving on to feeding for holidays. All pretty simple stuff, really. I've put, if you're going, I think the main thing would be, because if you go to a cottage or something, you're going to have a freezer, and hopefully there'll be a raw store locally. And even if it's only a small freezer, you'd be able to just go and buy the raw food. You can also get food delivered frozen to the cottage or even to the campsite. We get a delivery from the supermarket on the day that we arrive at the campsite, and that works really well because it means you don't have to carry lettuces getting squished by tents and things like that. So that's a very wise thing to do. And I would imagine if you talk to your raw food supplier, they would send raw food to your campsite or your cottage. What we do when we are camping, which is the same as caravanning essentially in terms of inconvenience, is we have got a cool box. It's a Coleman Extreme, and the label on the top says keeps ice as ice for 6 days. Okay, i.e., it's the most thermally efficient cool box that I've come across. Okay, I was told about it probably 5 or 6 years ago by clients. They said this is the one to go. So if you're away for a weekend, that's definitely, you just fill it to the gunnels with food and it will stay frozen. If you're going camping, if you fill it to the gunnels with food and and you can put in ice blocks and things like that, that will be pretty much frozen for 6 days. Okay, you're going to be removing food as you go each day, so by the time you get to day 6, it's going to be, say, half full. But it doesn't really matter, because frozen, when meat is defrosting, it's still good for at least about 3 days. So that means 6 days in the being pretty much frozen, and then 3-4 days defrosting. It will defrost very slowly in the Coleman Extreme thing. If that doesn't work. There are companies doing very good raw food, dried raw food. One of the companies we use is called Rocketto, and they dry raw food at under 40 degrees. So literally, there's no significant heat coming in to cook the food, and they're really good. At a push, you could use a good quality tinned food. But I think the key thing here is to try and avoid kibble if you possibly can. Just because you're going on holiday doesn't mean necessarily you have to take some kibble. It might be your first thought, especially if you're new to raw, but actually if you can get around it with some of these ideas, that's a good idea. If you're going abroad and you're raw feeding, apparently you're not allowed to take any more than a day or two's worth of food with you. EU regulations, I'm not sure. So you can't just get a load of Rocketto, 2 weeks worth of Rocketto and go camping in France or anywhere. Okay, so I would suggest what you do is you get a good herb supplement, i.e. it's a pot of herb supplement, and you add that to ideally frozen meat from a supermarket, because in Europe you'll always be able to find a supermarket, and in those supermarkets you'll always be able to find frozen meat. And the reason we freeze is for the parasite issue. If you freeze raw meat, you will eliminate all parasites and you will severely reduce Campylobacter contamination. So I think that that's a good thing to do. What I wouldn't do is go to the local butcher, get fresh meat and just feed it straight to the dog. You probably get away with it. You'll probably get away with it 99.9% of the time, but you don't want to give parasites to the dog. Okay, so there you go. That would be just a few thoughts with regard to feeding dogs on holiday. You'll be surprised how much I get asked about that, actually. Coleman Extreme, Nikki, is the box. Thank you, Rebecca, for reminding her. That's great. They're really good. Don't cost the earth. You can get them everywhere. Okay, so preventing parasites. How do we prevent parasites? So let's say we are going on a holiday in the UK, because most people who are with us this evening are in the UK. So I'm going to be UK centric. Two types of parasites that you have to think about. You've got internal parasites, worms, and external parasites, and that will be fleas and ticks. Okay, so let's say you're going off to Scotland, and there's loads of sheep and loads of deer, and there's loads of ticks, and you're thinking, crumbs, I don't want to use a pharmaceutical, I don't want to use a pesticide if I can possibly help it. What are the options? So the first option is to talk to the guys at Verm-X, and they do a product called Flea and Tick, and it's a herbal mix that you add to food, which makes the dog less attractive to fleas and ticks. It's fantastic. That's why it's called Flea and Tick. Genius name, by the way. Literally, it's really good, really simple. So that's what I would do on the inside. On the outside, what I normally suggest clients to do in order to avoid pesticides and pharmaceuticals, I would suggest look at Cedar Side. There's a spray. It's an American company, and they get a lot of ticks in the woods in the southern states, for example, in the southern states, but all over the states they will get quite a lot of ticks in all but the most arid of areas. And the Cedar Side, it's a spray, and you just spray the dog. You tend to spray the front, so you spray the ears and face, but not the eyes. Neck and shoulders would be the main place to concentrate the spray on, because dog runs through grass, ticks latch onto the first thing that they come across, and so they tend to be mainly at the front. You can see them on the front edge, leading edge of the stifle, the knee in people, but much more common in at the front end. So those would be the two things. On the inside, we'd use something like Verm-X, flea and tick, and on the outside, I always advise people to look at Cedarcide spray. This is my my spray action, so that you know what I'm doing there. Okay, so that's as far as fleas and ticks are concerned, and then those are really pretty reliable things to use. Right, go for it. So as far as worms are concerned, if you're in the UK, I would suggest you just do your normal worm regime. If you're using Verm-X, then continue using that. If you don't use Verm-X and you're going to somewhere and you're not quite sure what the local environment is like, then it would be a good time to start with using Verm-X. And what I do with dogs when they're using Verm-X is I will just do a worm count every 3 months or so. We'll check for lungworm, we'll check for fox lungworm, we'll check for hedgehog lungworm, as well as gut worms, and that really would be the regime for in the UK. If you're going abroad, then in order to travel to and from the Europe or anywhere in the world, there is usually, depending on the country that you're traveling to, you usually have to give a broad spectrum wormer before you travel out and before you travel back in again. And because it's the law, there's not really a way around that, but definitely worth looking at the detailed regulations for that particular country that you're going to, in order to just see if there's any loopholes that you can find in order to avoid the using the internal pesticide. Because if your dog hasn't got worms, it's a shame to have to use a wormer, a pesticide, internal pesticide, in order to clear them of something that they haven't got. So there you go. Just a few thoughts really with regard to with preventing parasites there. We're coming up to the half hour. Let me just see about let's have a look. Eileen is saying Coleman Extreme, we have a 20-year-old predecessor to this model and it's great. We find the butchers near camping sites and are happy to freeze some meaty bones for a couple of weeks prior to our holiday, so we have a good supply of frozen. Fabulous, great. There you go. Talk to the butcher in the local town of near the campsite, and say we're going to be there. Please, can you put some meat in the freezer? I hadn't even thought of that, so that's great, Eileen. Good work there. Now let's have a look. So Sharon says, how often do you recommend worming with Verm-X, as some dogs' advice pages advise to only use Verm-X when you need to, and to use FetLab or wormcount.com or whoever, otherwise to test first, and if it comes back clear from worms, don't use anything. Well, I think that Verm-X works best when it's used long term. It's not a pesticide, it's not a pharmaceutical, and I think that it among other things enhances gut function, enhances gut immunity, improves microbiome. This is my experience, and therefore if you use it like a chemical wormer, which goes in, kills the worms, and then comes out and pollutes the environment, then you haven't given the body a run up, a time to improve gut immunity, gut biome, gut lymphatic drainage, optimize motility, optimize the mucus layer within the gut. So I'd say long term would be the way I would use it. Verm-X do 2 products for dogs, and there's a liquid that you use 3 days each month, which is great, and that's what we use with ours. And the other one is crunchies. You can give crunchies every day, and they contain Verm-X within them, and that's what we use for the cat, because giving the liquid to the cat is quite difficult. So there you go. That's that, Sharon. Thank you very much. Let's see. Have we got a couple more questions? Why? Let's have a look. Lorian says, I thought you only had to worm it on the return to the UK. It depends where you're going. I think the States you may need to worm. I don't do export of dogs to any of these countries, so I'm not 100% sure. And yes, definitely from Europe to the UK, you definitely have to worm. But I think check with some countries may require it as a prerequisite for entry. So just check. So let's have a look. What Eileen's saying. She uses 3 days at the beginning of each month. Okay, using Verm-X. Dogs love it. Test feces regularly. Off we go. There you go. And seem to be mated dogs, but with consistent nil results. There you go. There you go. So Eileen is substantiating that thought that most adult dogs don't have worms if they've got good gut function, and Verm-X helps with gut function. So it's really good. Let's have a look. Okay. Oh, Nikki, are you in the States? Sounds like you might be. Fabulous. Good. Is there Verm-X? Verm-X is spelt, by the way, Verm-O. It's spelt like that. Okay, so is there in the States? I'm not sure. I would suggest email Verm-X, and Cheryl will likely get back to you to say that they may. I'm not sure whether they are or not. But drop them a line and all will be well. This is good. Okay, so Sharon, she's using it. Great. This is good. Okay, well, this is good. Everybody's on message here, which is great. I didn't even prepare these responses, and yet everybody's on message. That's great. And Nikki says she's in Alaska, so fabulous. The beautiful Alaska. I'd love to get up there one of these days. Great, guys. I think we're good. I'm going to go now to let you get on with your evening. Have a good one. All the very, very best. Thanks for joining us. And just to remind you, 15% discount if you go to vermex.com and you put in holistic15 in the little coupon code. And in 3 whole weeks, we are going to be doing worms and domestic animals on Thursday, the 14th of July. Which is Bastille Day, isn't it? And and Arthur's birthday. So I'm going to say a very good evening to you. I'm going to go and get some dinner and look forward to speaking to you in 3 short weeks.